So, today we are going to talk about how we're screwed. No, but seriously, we are doomed for the next months. You see what I've done here? Yeah, this is essentially what all the news medias are trying to do to us. Essentially, today we're going to talk about the influence of new medias and social medias, how they are constructing the topics that are very important right now, like the issues with the Strait of Hormuz and the Iran war. If you are new here, hi, I'm Diana, and this is Diana Raw. We are here discussing topics like politics, sociology, and general pop culture because I'm a girly, so I don't know. Anyway, this was cringe. So let's start with what is actually all going about. We are going to do a general basic discourse analysis on the topic of the Iran war and how the news are showcasing the situation, how it does have an impact on your well-being, and as well on how you try for yourself to understand the situation right now. I am someone who normally I don't watch news. I just started watching news since the war in Iran happened. I am that type of person who, if there's something I'm very interested about, I really sit all day and watch news. This also happened at the beginning of the Ukrainian war in 2022, where essentially I would be stuck to the TV and just watch everything I can consume about the topic. It did leave an impression on me, and essentially after some point I stopped watching any news due to the fact that it really had a bad impact on my well-being. That have been said, let's start. Discourse analysis, there are different types of analysis in the sociology studies. But I think right now it's quite important to look at the discourse analysis by Laclau and Mouffe. They essentially constructed multiple new prospects on terms of hegemony and on terms of antagonism, and how does the general discourse get influenced by language. Laclau and Mouffe, for them, it was also very important. In terms of language, there are certain, let's say, for somebody who didn't study sociology, trigger words who mostly are without any meaning. And based on the context used, they are given a meaning. And that's essentially something you get to see a lot right now in a way how the news are talking about the Iranian war. Why is there so much broadcast about this topic? Essentially, obviously, we all have to stay updated and to always keep track on what is happening right now. But we essentially arrived in a fog of news. We don't really know what are real news, fake news, or propaganda. And that's why it's quite important to take a look on all news agencies that are providing information about this very important topic. In terms of the news platform, whether they're public or private, essentially for, let's say, mostly the private ones, it's very important for them to keep you stick on their platforms, either on the websites or on their YouTube channels or Twitter accounts, whatever. For them to be able to do that, they are using a certain type of language with trigger words, as I have explained before, like, for example, obliterated, or what Trump also has been cited about a lot, that he will bomb a whole nation. This type of sentences, this type of simple, singular words are creating a certain feeling for the consumer, a feeling of fear, of anxiety, of not understanding what is going on. Right now, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the US-Israel-Iranian war is a very polarizing topic. And because of that, many news are trying to get as much exposure on these topics because people are very interested, because it impacts all of us. So for that, keywords are being used. For example, the names of the countries or even the name of the place, the Strait of Hormuz, and they are being put in a construction with other terms that are triggering. Generally, if we go back, the US, Israel, and Iran drama, let's say, is happening since many, many years. And it has always been a thing. It didn't happen just yesterday. It didn't happen just 2 months ago. This is an ongoing situation that we are living through. But most people all around the world, especially in the Western countries, have been not affected as much as right now, especially right now in the supermarkets, at the gas pump, all over where we need to get supplies. And this will go on for a longer term. And because of that, the news agencies are trying to create a feeling of fear and a feeling of necessity in terms of being informed. But I haven't given any examples right now in how or in which ways they're creating these certain constructions. What we get to see a lot right now in the medias in terms of discourse perspectives is that we have a lot of this positioning in terms of which team is which. So we get to hear a lot from certain medias that US and Israel are the defenders. They are the one who try to bring peace. They try to make a difference and try to fight the aggressor Iran. On the other side, on other types of media, we get to hear a lot that the US and Israel are the aggressors and that they are a threat to global stability. So, and you are watching those news and you hear two different sides and you are questioning yourself, what is right? What is truth? Essentially, what I can tell you is that there is no truth. This is a war of narratives, as we have heard a lot before. And the one who is on charge on the narrative is the one who is winning. It's not only on the battlefield, it's not only in the Strait of Hormuz, it's in our minds, and it's especially in front of us. It's in our phones, on our laptops, in front of our TV. So this war, it's not happening far away from us. This war is happening just in front of you, just next to you. So as I have said, media is selecting which identity becomes the dominant one. Depending on what type of news you're watching, either pro-US or pro-Arabic countries, we are always, especially in the pro-US type of media, we are always listening that Iran is framed as a threat and that US is framed as protector. And sometimes, as I said, in other types of media, it is reversed. If we go back to the discourse analysis, this is something called articulation. And it's very important to keep track on how language is being used in terms of how they create this type of narratives. In connection with the narratives, certain headlines are being used, like "word on the brink," "oil crisis incoming," or "this will change everything," something that you also get to hear a lot from, let's say, conspiracy theorists on YouTube. These are headlines, these are conglomerates of words that create a certain emotion, that's their job of this type of headlines. They want to trigger you. They want to keep you watching and keep you reading. And in that way, to give a positive answer to the narratives that they want to be the one that are hegemonial. Together with these headlines, there is also an urgency created. So you'll get to hear the headlines that the oil crisis is incoming, and the underline is essentially "watch now before it's too late," or "this just happened." And this also keeps your attention in flow. And more attention for them means more profit for the agencies or for the narrative. But this type of headlines we are seeing a lot in all type of platforms. Yes, essentially because this repetition creates a new perceived truth. So truth is something very subjective and based on different things that I might explain on another video that's more related to sociology. What I essentially try to tell you is that the narrative doesn't mean it's based on the truth. The narrative is something that politicians, media networks, and even more want you to think that is an absolute truth. But an absolute truth can only exist based on a full coverage of facts. And that's a problem. The more repetitive, bad news, populistic headlines you see, the more the real truth is being hidden. But let's move away from the truth and let's go to the topic of crisis. The construction of crisis is very essential in terms of using fear as a discursive tool. So whenever we read headlines like closing the strait, it is not just a sentence, it's not just an event, but it's a symbol of global collapse. And in terms of discourse theory, this is a noble point, so essentially a central idea in terms of organizing of meaning. So essentially, whenever we see the sentence of closing the Strait in Hormuz and it being put together with could happen or is happening or is about to happen, there is a certain feeling of permanent danger being created. And if we go back to the idea of truth, this permanent danger that you are right now being surrounded by is the very essential tool that binds the narrative to the created truth that should be seen by the hegemony. And if we go back to the idea of how the narratives are being created in terms of countries, in terms of places and certain governments, the polarization in terms of us versus them, it's really showing up. For Laclau and Mouffe, in their discourse analysis, this was related to the term of antagonism. So the media is using this idea of antagonism to create the world in two parts, to make essentially the division between us, the safe, rational, and the justified part, and them, the dangerous and irrational and the threatening part. So whenever we are looking in terms of what type of media we are consuming, the Western media is seeing Iran as a threat, and alternative medias are seeing US and Israel as the aggressor. Both type of ideas and both constructions of antagonism are part of the discourse. So essentially not a neutral truth, because essentially truth is based on very subjective matters. And with the creation of an antagonism, it is tried to simplify very complex geopolitical situations and to increase engagement and to reduce critical thinking, and essentially to keep both parties more far away from each other. So I'm coming now to the empty signifier. So essentially why words like war are so powerful. Laclau's concept created the empty signifiers, which are very vague but very powerful terms like war, crisis, security, and freedom. Why do they matter? Everyone understands them on an emotional basis what these words mean, but they do mean different things to different situations. So when we have the war in the Middle East, it becomes a flexible narrative container, and it's filled differently depending on the agenda that is trying to pursue. But let's dive into conspiracy content, the other extreme, next to the news agencies. So whenever you hear claims like this war was planned, oil crisis is engineered, or governments are manipulating everything, they try to give simple explanations or very, let's say, legendary explanations to complex issues. And it does feel very exclusive for the ones who consume this type of media and like a type of hidden truth. And it plays a lot on the idea of distrust and uncertainty against governments and systems that are already exist. But essentially, conspiracies are not really part of the discourse. They are an alternative discourse that is happening next to the, let's say, hegemonial or truth narrative and truthful discourse. And what do they actually do? They re-articulate events. So they recreate new ideas and new perspectives on why certain events are happening. And essentially, why do they even succeed with that? Well, because they really clear up the whole sphere of what is going on. They give a clear enemy, simple explanations, and they also give an emotion certainty. So whenever you are watching conspiracy news, they are trying to also work with fear. Like the fear and anger and anxiety are key notes to how they function. But we have to question ourselves, why do they want us to be scared and to be anxious all the time just while we open our phone or turn on the TV. Essentially, that's the business model. The attention economy is what is driving on all this type of platforms, because this platforms are rewarding the ones who are creating the content with clicks, watching time, and engagement. Based on that, and let's say also comments and shares, based on that, people are getting their money out of it. So essentially, the more fear people have, the higher is the engagement. The more people comment, the more people share videos, and the more it gets spread. So fear, essentially, it's something that triggers curiosity, a certain survival instinct that you want to share with everybody, and a constant checking for updates is also part of what fear is. And due to that fear and the way how you react to it, they are earning money. But let's go away from the idea of financial security and a financial way of earning from media and from narratives and fear-mongering. Essentially, let's talk about the economy of discourse. Laclau and Mouffe said that power means the ability to fix meaning. And the more power you have, the more you are ruling over the truth. So for today, on platforms like YouTube and Meta, which reward with engagement and emotional intensity, you are getting more and more power over these platforms if you are somebody who creates media. So due to that, not only people who are content creators and essayists, analysts, media agencies, they don't only earn financially, but also on a deeper level in terms of power. So we talked about all this, and what I have to say to you is that these are real events that are happening right now with the Strait of Hormuz, with the Iran-West Israel war, and with the Lebanon crisis. This is all happening. But how media amplifies the fear in terms of what they showcase and how they showcase things. It's meant for you to not really understand the severeness or the situation in general. They're amplifying everything that is happening just for you to stay stuck to your phone. I don't want to say that all what is happening is not real or that all that is happening is not as bad. It is. But it's very important to make the difference between, is this information neutral and just trying to keep me, how I said, informated, or is it actually trying to impose a certain narrative? For next time, when you're watching news, keep in mind this video, analyze the type of language that has been used, analyze the groups that are formed with the help of media, in terms of videos, photos, and language, essentially. Always keep asking yourself who is actually profiting from this information. So I see you next time, and yeah.